when we're trying to do this, but also which tools we should use when we are doing this, and in the end try to think about long term and which indicators and control management techniques we should use when we are managing our incubator. So it's very much focused on financial modeling and thinking about the incubator in as a whole, and its sustainability on the long term. But basically, that's it. This is kind of divided in 4 parts. The first part is linked to financial sustainability. The second part will try to use some financial models, and then the third part will try to talk about risks and scenarios, and in the end we'll basically discuss how to align our financial goals with long-term planning. So that's the road for these 3 hours. We'll have a break in the middle, 20-minute break, because this is very heavy stuff on accounting and revenue. So I think people need a break to think about the different stuff we're going to talk about this morning. Um, yeah, about me, you can like scan this code and you will go to my LinkedIn presentation. But here I'm basically one of the trainers of this um, program, but mainly I'm the CEO of Startup Lady. Startup Lady is a BIC, is part of EBN. It's an incubator accelerator based in Portugal. Nowadays, we are the fifth largest incubator in Portugal. We have more than 150 companies, and we are located in 5 different cities. And myself, besides being the CEO of an incubator accelerator, like some of you, I'm also a professor. I have a doctorate on innovation economics. I'm a professor at the Polytechnical University of Leiria, but I'm also an invited professor at ISCTE in Lisbon and other universities. And I'm also an entrepreneur. I have a small company that works on sustainability, and it's trying to save the world company by company. So that's a little bit about me. So I have like this vision that goes from the theoretical part, because I've been a professor for the past 23 years, but also the practical and empirical part, because I've been working as a manager for the past 10 years. So I think it will be helpful in the examples I'm going to give you. So this is a little bit about me. And then I would like to know your level of knowledge on these subjects related to financial accounting, etc. So you could either scan, or some of I think we can put this link on the chat also. Yes, I don't know.
Yes, I'm just doing that at the moment.
And we'll go to another screen on the Mentimeter app to see and test your level of knowledge, just to get to know you guys a little bit and to know how much you know about financial stuff. Okay, so I'm going to interrupt my screen sharing on my slides, and now I'm going to here. Uh, so the first question is, what is your level of knowledge on finance and accounting? So we already have some answers. Only two people are here. For the ones that are entering, Douglas is going to copy the link you can enter. We have 4 people now.
Okay, let me do that again.
So yeah, most people have a moderate level of knowledge on finance and accounting. No one has a really high level of knowledge. But at least most of you, I understand from your answers, are the 7 that are in this Menti. At least you know what a balance sheet is. So that's not bad. No answer on what the hell is a balance sheet. Moderate is good. So I'll try to customize the session to moderate level of knowledge uh, yeah, of the participants. So at least we have 10 answers here. I'm going to advance to the second answer. If you guys are okay with that. Okay, we have one more. Moderate. So we have 2 high, most people are moderate, and 1 low, and most people know what the balance sheet is. I think otherwise they wouldn't be on this session if they didn't know what the balance sheet is. We have someone that is an accountant present, I think really high. I hope so. Well, let's move further to the next question, which is your role in your institution. Okay, so we have mid management mostly, top management, and 1 operational. Also, this is important because some of the things we're going to see are like more related to the top of the organization and how we see financial sustainability, and others are more linked to technical tools that we might use when achieving financial sustainability. Yeah, we don't have any more answers. I'll proceed. Okay, no more answers. And lastly, which is also good pedagogically, what do you expect from me? I don't have money to give you. That's first thing I should alert everybody. So no answer. About financial analysis. One answer, please. How to improve the profit. Me too. Any more answers, guys and girls? Impact. Strengthen my skills. Okay, a starting point, you know. So we have some how to improve, strengthen my skills, impact calculation, learn financial tools. Yeah, we'll have cash flow management. That's really important. We have some slides about cash flow um, in the further ahead. So this is some of the things that actually we're going to talk about. I'm not sure that 3 hours are enough to um, improve financial or accounting skills. We would need like a few more sessions for that, but at least we'll have the beginning um, for some of the stuff you should know when you're um, managing an incubator. So going back to our slides, I'm going to give the floor to our dear Christina, I think, or
Yeah,
Robert. I don't.
sure. Thank you. So that's great. We have an initial idea of, let's say, your level of knowledge and level of expectations. And indeed, so before we deep dive into finances, I'll just give a short introduction on what is BIC Africa. Most of you are probably already familiar with the project, but there might be some new faces. All right, so as I said, Robert and myself, we represent the European Business and Innovation Center Network, EBN. We are based in Brussels, in Belgium, and actually, so EBN itself as well started as an European Commission funded project back in 1985 with the aim to create a network of business incubators in Europe, specifically those who focus on supporting innovative startups and entrepreneurs. So today we offer a wide range of technical business support services, but one of our core services, let's say, is the EBN label. So what we do is actually we certify a questionnaire, and indeed, if they demonstrate that they are a robust, committed organization in supporting startups, we award them with labels. So we call these organizations EU BICs, Business Innovation Centers, and these are certified business incubators from all over Europe and also beyond Europe, who offer really a complex spectrum of entrepreneurial innovation support, including incubation, acceleration, internationalization services, access to funding, and so on. All right, next slide, please. Okay, and so BIC Africa is part of the EU program Support to Entrepreneurship and MSME Creation. So actually, to give you the full picture, there are 5 separate country projects. Each of these aim to establish and consolidate business incubators in their respective countries with the long-term goal of creating jobs and sustainable livelihoods. So the aim of each project is really quite similar, but the work program and sector focus and so on vary quite a bit. So in the case of Angola, this project is implemented by IFC, which is part of the World Bank. The projects in Comoros, Madagascar, and Somalia are implemented by UNIDO, and the project in Ethiopia is implemented by Sequa, a German consultancy company. And so in addition to these 5 projects, there is our project, BIC Africa, which aims to really create a regional network to provide capacity building services that are complementary to the ones that are already part of the work programs of the country projects, and to provide software networking services in the region as well. So we basically, our aim is also to interconnect these 5 projects to create synergies between them and to create a network on a bigger scale. In terms of our beneficiaries, so we mostly work directly with business incubators, but it is, of course, for the benefit of entrepreneurs, SMEs, and startups. And in the process, we also work together with a number of other stakeholders, so policymakers, business angels, universities. We work a lot with the EU delegations as well in each of the target countries. So, of course, we try to involve quite a lot of different ecosystem actors. Next slide, please. Okay, and just to give you an idea again of how exactly we support the business incubators foremost that are part of the country projects, because actually each of these projects have a different number of organizations that they really support and work with. For example, in the case of Somalia, they work with 3 business incubators very closely, but in the case of Madagascar, they really work with a network of 30 incubators. So as I said before, each project varies quite a lot in their approach. So in terms of capacity building and skill development services, we have the virtual training center, which is the session that you are witnessing today. And we have a yearly edition of this virtual training center. Every time we have about 4 sessions. We also have what we call national and African on-site boot camps. So these are events that last 2-3 days on site. We've already completed actually all the national boot camps. We had one in Angola and in Madagascar last year. Here the idea is also to similarly to bring experts, expert trainers who have expertise in business incubation, and to train the local business incubator managers. In case of the African bootcamp, we will have the next one in Angola in October. So in this case, we bring incubator managers from all the 5 country projects, and we train them on specific topics of interest. Usually we do a needs analysis before, so this could be topics like setting up a mentorship program, for example, but could also be on topics such as today, like financial management, business modeling, and so on. Then we have services that are related to establishment of connections. So a part of this is a soft landing service. So hereby we aim to connect European and African incubators. Once again, incubator managers from Africa come to Europe for about a week's time to be hosted at European organizations with the aim to exchange knowledge, to understand better how the organization, how the peers in Europe work, what could be also replicated in Africa, what is relevant, what is less relevant. So it's an opportunity to really establish a connection, also to get access to possibly European investors, European organizations, So that is really our aim. And similarly, we have a staff exchange program. So in this case, it is an exchange between business incubator managers within Africa. So for example, last year we had incubators from Comoros who went to Madagascar again to spend a few days time and to learn about their peers organization. So thirdly, as you can see, we also provide quality assessment activities. So as I mentioned before, this is one of the core activities of EBN. And here the aim is to see if we could establish a sort of a quality standard also in the African context for African incubators, following the same methodology that EBN already has, but adapting it to the local context. Finally, we have other exchange and cooperation services. We have specific webinars that focus on diaspora, whereby we aim to connect entrepreneurs from the diaspora of the 5 countries with entrepreneurs in Africa to share their success stories, possibly to also establish a relationship of mentorship. The aim is to interconnect them. And we also do, of course, many other things, but I'm not gonna go into detail today. As you could see, so we really work quite closely with business incubators. We don't really work directly with entrepreneurs, except in some cases, like indeed the diaspora webinars. And also we have a specific acceleration program for female entrepreneurs. So that is one of our only services that is directly targeted at established female entrepreneurs. Actually, it's a 3-month program whereby we select about 20 women from sub-Saharan Africa, and we try to take their businesses to the next level through trainings and mentorship. So for those of you who are interested, please let me know. And again, just maybe to say, so for future opportunities and activities, don't hesitate to follow our social media channels. We always try to post and update you on the next upcoming events and opportunities and so on. Okay, so I think that was the last slide. So thank you again for being here, and thank you, Victor, for delivering today's session, and I'm gonna hand over to you. And just again to remind you all, don't hesitate to put questions in the chat. So Douglas and ourselves, we will support Victor with telling him if you have any questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Christina, for the amazing presentation. And should I emphasize that we're going to talk about financial sustainability, and one of the services that EBN provides is benchmarking and certification. And when you do benchmarking, you can compare your financial indicators with the average and the top and the low, and that's amazingly helpful when you're managing something. So knowing your position among other peers, and if you're doing good or bad related with different financial indicators or obviously activity indicators, it's really important. So I would like to stress the importance of benchmarking and certification, among the other stuff EBN does, of course, but I really love that part, and it has been really helpful for Startup Lydia, our incubator, since we've been certified with EBN. We're using a lot these benchmarking exercises. So thank you. Some cross-selling. So again, Menti, so I'll give you a few moments. You can you can enter Minty through the QR code or put the number here below, or you can copy paste it here. Okay, I'll give you a few moments, and then we're going to the Menti again. Sorry, I just want to know a little bit more about you guys. Okay. So the link I think is on the chat. You just press it, and I'm going to another presentation here, and I just need to present. So I need to know a little bit about your incubators and organizations. So the first question is, how big is your team? I'll give you a few moments because in the end, I've been a management professor for the past 23 years. Obviously, the principles of management are, oh, sorry, are always the same, but it's kind of different managing 5 people than managing 40, like some example we have here, at least 2 organizations that have between 26 and 40 people. So really, really different. Okay, so we have a few answers. We have 2 big organizations for incubators, not for company size, but I would say between 26 and 40, we have like a big science incubator park. The ones that are between 6 and 15, I would say they're more rather around the average around the world of the size of the team in an incubator. Let's move forward. I don't have everybody here, but then I have a question for you guys is, how do you get money? Is it a mix of private grants, government funds, services, equity from startups, or is it mainly one of these things here? So no questions, no answers. Mix. Okay, thank you. Services. Other. I need to explain the other. So services, mix, private grants, government grants, and 2 others, 3 others. Guys, the ones that answered others, if you can like put on the chat of teams, where do you get the money from? I would love to know what you mean by others. So So I'm kind of worried here. So we usually expect that a sustainable incubator should have a mix of different revenue sources. But we are mostly focused from startups, okay? Services probably. Mohammed Gili, okay? No one takes equity, at least from these answers. Anyone wants to clarify the other answer they gave? No one. So I'll proceed. Good ones on the mix one. Mix is good. Were you profitable last year? Okay, sponsorships. Thank you. One-time sponsorship. We'll talk about sponsorship. I like the it's complicated answer. Don't be shy. This is anonymous, so you can frankly say we're not profitable.
Vitor, also someone from the previous, for the previous questions said in the chat that they are collecting membership fees as they're an association and also have one-time sponsorship.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. I like the part where we say it's complicated. Let's wait for one more answer or so.
From
Paulo Silva.
one
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I saw Paulo. Hi, Paulo. How are you? So no one wants to answer more about, or probably they don't know yet if they were so this question is more, let me explain what I mean with this. What share of your revenue is something that you're able to get each month or each year, so it's recurrent. So like membership fees, someone said, like rental fees for incubators, or something that you regularly collect instead of grants and sponsorships, because projects those are one time. So the idea is to see which part of your revenue is recurrent, which I think, as many of you know, it's something really important when we are analyzing not only incubators, but startups. So we have one answer, 31 to 40%. So imagine that 90% of your revenue comes from a grant, a government grant, or a project, or African project, or some project of World Bank. So that's not recurrent. and you would be around less than 10 or 20 to 30. No one wants to answer more of this, or they don't know. This is something like we're talking about financial sustainability. This is one thing that most of you should know about your incubators. So which part of your revenue is recurrent and which is not, because then you can assess the risk of your financial sustainability, because projects in grants in sponsorships and then you're always searching for the next grant or the next project, and that complicates the sustainability of your incubator. Okay, guys, really thank you for your answers, at least the 3 people that answered this part. Okay, 3140, it's not bad. So you're moving towards some kind of sustainability. And no more answers, we'll move forward, which is the end. Okay, guys, thank you for your honest answers. Okay, and let's start to talk a little bit about what is financial sustainability for an incubator. Before moving forward, does anyone want to give an answer? You can write it on the chat. No one? No one wants to risk an answer. Well, of course, you could say like, I'm sustainable because my revenue is bigger than my cost, my expenses. So yeah, continuity of income. Thank you. Aguero. And then those two things combined, okay, our ability to sustain revenue and to sustain revenue above costs, it's really important when we are talking about financial sustainability. I have a definition for you, okay? So our ability to generate resources, so through income, grants, sponsorships, revenues, streams to cover our expenditures. Thank you, Evaldo, also. So we should be able to cover our operational expenditures like salaries, facilities, without relying on sporadic and unpredictable funding. And that's aimed at the question I have on the Minty, which is basically we should have enough revenue to cover our operational expenditures, which is something we should aim towards. Most incubators are not able to do it, okay? But we should strive to achieve that goal. Of course, a sustainable incubator should be able to invest in growth. So the idea of having new tools, new facilities, new services that we can offer in the future. Okay, we have another answer here from Belay. Maintain stability despite market fluctuations or shifts in the funding landscape. So ensuring the program can keep serving entrepreneurs. So the idea is, even if there's a problem, economical problem, or there's a shift in the government, you should be able to continue to operate. Again, reinvest or scale, which is not easy. So I'm going to give you the example of Startup Lady. So we've been growing for the past 4 years. We grew more than 100% in 2 years. And now we need to invest and create new facilities. And that's a huge challenge, because you have to assure a return on investment on a fixed amount of years if you're going to invest in the construction of a new facility to host new startups or more startups. And that's a difficult management decision, because we are a non-profit association, and investments have to be taken really carefully. And for me, as a manager, that's an important decision. At our scale, I need to spend 1 million euros, and we don't have the government support. And 1 million euros is a lot of money for an incubator that doesn't have grants. So this is really important. So the idea is not merely survive, but to continue and expand our support to the ecosystem. That is a financial sustainable incubator. So I think this is like a lengthy answer, but it's an important answer, because it gives you a critical strategic vision on what you're trying to achieve, which is not merely survive, but also trying to grow and offer new services. Okay, any questions? Moving forward, of course, sometimes it depends on the type of incubator we have, because most of the incubators we know of and models are non-profit, because they're associations or government owned or municipality owned, or they are university owned. So, and usually those are not-for-profit incubators that rely a lot on private grants, government subsidies, and in-kind financing. And then we have for-profit incubators, like, let's say, Y Combinator or Techstars, which are the two most famous in the world, where most of the money might come from equity, but also private investment, programs, debt financing, etc. So it really depends sometimes on the type of incubator we have, where we are working with. Of course, a little distinction between the different sources of revenue. Private grants that can come from citizens, corporations, programs. Local private investment might be more focused on for-profit incubators, where wealthy individuals or companies are searching for a return on investment. So imagine kind of a business angel that instead of investing in a startup, he invests in a venture builder because he wants to have the return from the venture builder, which is private, instead of one single startup. Then we have corporate social responsibility. That happens a lot on local non-profit incubators, like our case in Startup Lady, which is basically the idea that we are working on a market failure. So we are promoting startups and technological development, innovation, and that will have an important role in the future of the region. Also, if we do not support startups, most of them will fail. We know, all of us know the famous statistic that of 50 to 70% of startups fail before the third year. So this idea of local companies, entities will invest on incubators as corporate social responsibility, because on the long run, they're trying to improve the ecosystem and the region they're located in. Public funding is obviously really important for a lot of incubators. Some of them are completely public funded. Of course, that doesn't mean you don't need to have a profit, but it gives you a leeway. It's like a restraint. So the government gives you 500K to manage per year your incubator, and you know you have to offer the services, and you have to be profitable or net zero with that amount of money. There's a lot of incubators that work like this. Sometimes this hinders a little bit the growth of the incubator because they mostly rely on the government support. And obviously, why do governments do this? Because as local entities realize, incubators work on market failures. We're trying to create innovation. We're trying to decrease the amount of startups that fail. So we're trying to upgrade skills. We're trying to attract or retain human capital. So in the end, we're working on market failures. So basically, there's a economic rationale for supporting startups. Then we have multilateral programs like the ones we talked about in the beginning that support incubators, that can be supported by World Bank or other entities that want to achieve some kind of development in a certain region. And again, they're aimed at market failures. Then we have grants. Grants are more focused on a project. So there's a transfer of funds to a venture without requirement of payment, but with conditions. It could be governments, foundations, corporations. Usually grants are linked with different purposes. It can be a specific project. It can be a specific objective linked with the grant. And finally, we have sponsorships, which are similar to grants, but they can last for a number of years. And they are vulnerable to change because imagine that you are an incubator and you're supported by Santander, which is, or a big bank or something like that, if there's a change in the board or the CEO of that organization that is sponsoring your incubator, so you might be in trouble. So and then we have some kind of examples of sponsors here. Technical universities usually sponsor incubators to foster spin-offs. Research institutes sponsor incubators to sponsor research commercialization. State, basically regional development, poverty alleviation. Private sector sponsors incubators because they search profit or spin-offs or equity. And venture capitalists, they sponsor startups because incubators because they want money. As simple as that. Of course, you can always get revenue from, or not revenue on this case, but you can sources of capital with debt financing that would help you in your capital investments, capex, or on your capital expenditures. And you can go to a bank and you have obviously will have to pay interests, and it has a high cost, and usually you have to have collateral for this. Some countries have subsidized loans for incubators because they want to foster political goals. In our case, imagine the example of Startup Leiria I gave you a few moments ago, which is we're expanding. We need a new building. We have some part of the money, but we need probably a loan. But we need to calculate the interest rate and obviously the return on investment with that interest rate when we are trying to invest in a specific type of investment. This type is a building. So we should always do that type of math when we are using debt financing. And of course, there's revenue we can take from our startups in our ecosystem. So rental fees, very common. In the end, incubators have physical spaces where startups can grow. So we charge them a rental fee. Consulting services that might be appended to the rental fees. Royalty agreements. This is more tricky. So we can have a percentage of sales based on the success of the incubator, of the startup, and equity agreements when you take a specific amount of equity from startups. Usually it works for private incubators. And brokerage fees, when you brokerage deals, this is like a model you can use with VC funds, where basically you can have an amount of money if there's a successful investment. In Startup Leiria, we have that with a few funds and with Portugal Ventures, which is the Portuguese-owned venture capital firm. I'm not going to go through all of this, but rental fees, of course, are a steady revenue. Usually, they represent 20 to 25% and of the total incubators revenue. Obviously, if you live from rental fees, probably you will be a smaller incubator. That's really interesting. We did this math in our incubator. If that would be our only source of funding, typically we could provide the wages, the salaries to around 5 people or 6 or 7. So we couldn't do all the other services. So typically one manager for every 20, 40 incubatees. And obviously, this kind of bears the risk that you become a leasing company instead of an incubator. And that's a discussion that we usually have in our board in Startup Leiria, because if we are focused on selling space, we are a leasing firm. We're not an incubator, and we're not doing our purpose, which is basically help startups. Consulting services usually include bookkeeping, marketing, document processing, study tours. Most incubators also provide this type of services in partnership or included in the packages they sell. This is really important because usually companies that are starting, they need this type of services at a discount. As I've told you, royalty agreements are not very typical in most incubators. This would include 2 to 5% of the incubatee revenue in 3 years. Brokerage fees, really interesting. If you work with a big array of investors, and equity agreements for private incubators, especially the ones that are on more sophisticated ecosystems, are really good because it only takes one company to be really successful for you to shoot for the moon. So it's like a no-brainer. You can have like 100 companies that are not successful. You don't have any problem if they're not successful, because then you have equity of nothing, but you didn't spend almost nothing. But when you have one that is really successful, then this could be a way of sharing revenue. So then we have here another question. Sorry. So you already have the link. Let's go to Menti. So I'll give you a few moments to try to answer. Okay, so I think at least from the people that are here, the consensus is more on the mixed. Okay. Um, some questions from you guys. What do I think? Well, no one has questions. I love it. Well, don't worry. Uh, so I have here like a small analysis on this. So service fees good for regular operating costs. Sustainability, it depends. Participation in capital, high risks, uncertain, and delayed returns. Sponsorships and partnerships, significant resources can be obtained. Public funding, it depends on government policies. But the thing is, you should do a mixed model. So obviously balancing short-term and long-term sources. If you have like a model, we saw someone answer here, where you have associatees that pay an annual fee. That's interesting because you have a long-term resource of funding. If you have fees that come from the um, rental, so this is really interesting in terms of balancing long-term and short-term. Strategic partnerships are also really important, and but they should be aligned with the goals. And obviously, you should always do some kind of risk assessment to identify periods of lower revenue. So here you have a breakdown on EBN members. Where do they get their funding? National, regional, local bodies, 27%, 14% public sector income, and then you have a big mix here of different sources of revenue. And then here you have also a breakdown for Middle East, North Africa, and other regions. Well, I'm going to propose that we do, instead of a 20-minute break, of a 10-minute break now before entering a more technical part, if you guys are okay.
I think so. We could have
Yes.
10 minutes and then later you want another 10-minute break
Exactly. Let's do
between
10
other
minutes
parts.
now, and we'll come back in 10 minutes. Okay? Okay. I love
Yeah,
very
sure.
silent. Our group is very silent. I love them.
Hi, Vitor. I think it's 20. We can start, maybe.
Yes. Sorry. Let's go. And we're back. Yeah, this was a small exercise. I'm going to jump through it. We don't need to do it. One of the things that we struggle is that, and again, I'm going to use a personal example. Is most of us have a mission, and our mission is to support startups or develop the region or create innovation, and in that sense, of course, like we might occupy a premium real estate inside of a city or something like that. We do it in Startup Leiria. You can do it in your countries, and you could charge much more money on rental fees, because you could have there um, a Google's office or Microsoft office, and they would pay a lot more for the space and the services that you're providing. But in the end, our mission is to support entrepreneurship. So we have to balance that in terms of what we're trying to do. For instance, in our new building, we're thinking about that. We were thinking about that, and I did the financial projections to calculate the return on investment. And of course, it would completely work even with a commercial loan if I had if I applied prices, premium prices to services and space. But of course, I'm not going to apply premium price for real estate rental because in the end, our mission is to support entrepreneurs. What we do have, again, we are a special case. We might be really different from most incubators here. We have 1, 2, 3 buildings, 4 buildings, and we apply different rates for different types of companies and for the different time they're being in our ecosystem. So we have a tiered level of rental and service for my starting startups or ideating, so pre-seed, and something completely different in terms of pricing for scale-ups or corporates. So this is like a good lesson to learn when you're trying to apply a revenue model. We also do this, that comes in the next part, which is we try to have specific acceleration programs sponsored by corporate entities. If we have an acceleration program based on energy or sustainability, we're going to seek a sustainability company or an energy company in Portugal, like you could do in Angola. Okay, let's put our government company sponsoring a program based on energy or sustainability. So this might be really interesting. And if basically, if your mission is to create women entrepreneurs, you could offer with us reduced fees for women that participate in your programs. Another Menti, sorry guys. I think this is the last one. Don't be mad at me. Uh, let's put the link on the chat. So let's jump into our Minty. Uh, this one is really simple because the idea is to try to see what are the challenges on accessing funds. No one? Or you can write on the chat. So what are the main challenges assessing funding in Africa? No one? Less number of partners. Thank you. Single person. Collateral. Yes, for sure. Not many investors. Any more answers? Yeah, free answers. But let's move forward. What do you try to do to go through these hurdles?
There
The
is a
system,
comment on the chat. I don't know if you see
yeah,
that.
yeah, I saw it. The system is not transparent, so I know. Bureaucracy, corruption is also some problems that we face uh, when we're getting funding in Africa. Engage with donors, trying to approach too many offices, funding organizations. Those are good alternatives. Trust, really important. Well, we have three answers. I'm happy. Let's go back. Yeah, I think cost of finance, information gap, political and economic instability, and reliability of government and donor funding, corruption, and some of the challenges you also gave, which were basically lack of a directory of investors, and of course, there's not enough donors, and obviously there's a lot going on in Africa that complicates a little bit how you fund your your incubator. And that was what I was trying to argue. So here, I'm not going through all of this, and I'm not going to bother you with all this information. But I think since you're going to get the slides, this is important for you guys to know in future when you're looking for investments and the arguments that you can use. So in case of a development bank, for instance, one of the objectives they have is like through the incubator, they can invest in the wealth of the communities, and they're creating what we call positive externalities in economic terms and a leverage effect. Because if we create new ventures that are intensive in knowledge and innovation, this will lead to value added in these regions and create more employment and so on and so forth. So, and this is a great argument for funding with it and a development agency. While for a university, basically, what we're trying to do is to achieve a shared vision between what the university wants to achieve and what we're trying to do. And one of the main goals is transfer technology through spin-offs, spin-outs, and also give some income back to the university. Also, not to be disregarded, this happened to us, the university have rankings, and those rankings also include the number of spin-offs that come out of, or the use of intellectual property that is coming out of the university. For instance, we're a non-profit association, Startup Leiria. One of our associatees is the Polytechnic of Leiria, the Polytechnic University of Leiria. And our rector was really happy, and he was posting all over LinkedIn because they were considered top 10 or top 5, I don't remember, university in terms of spin-offs. So they like those rankings, so that's important. So private banks, well, private banks are private banks. Private investors usually, they might look for, they facilitate the incubators access to other sources of funding, but also they want to invest in the deal flow that is coming out of the incubator. Public sector, same thing, same rationale. They're operating in market failures, so they're trying to create development. Also, the concept of regional and national system of innovation, which is really important in development economics. So incubators are key players in fostering regional innovation systems. So they might not only direct fund the incubator, but facilitate the access of the incubator to other types of funding. For instance, in Portugal, we created, the government created a competitive call for incubators to get funding to improve their services and their facilities. And that was really interesting. So they didn't give each incubator an amount of money, but they created a competitive call for incubators. Then you have foundations, and foundations have normally, they have a specific vision linked with a specific area, and so they might be interested in an incubator that is aligned with their vision. And finally, also the NGOs, where again, market failures, wealth of the communities, impact problems, which is not the the subject this day, but they operate on that. So what arguments should you use to fund your incubator? So this is something that you should discuss among yourself. So this is really important when preparing a fundraising strategy. I'm going back like crazy for you guys to remember. This is all about revenue, how to get revenue, how to have a mixed model of revenue, which we know for empirical and scientific reasons that are the most resilient models. So relying on a mixed model usually makes sense. Okay. And which argument should you use when you're approaching financiers in your fundraising strategy? Okay. So we're done with that, and we're going to accounting. So each incubator should have a model. It can be Excel, it can be something else, where you plan all your investments, your revenues, and your costs. Without that, you're basically lost in space. So you cannot manage what you don't measure. So that's essential, guys. So you need some kind of spreadsheet where you plan your activity throughout the years. First of all, revenue and expenses are different from investments, okay? Because in investments are going to your goods and your all of your own stuff like buildings, machines, computers on your balance sheet. Okay, those are investments. So you can have pre-operating expenditures if you're starting, but you obviously you have investments on space, construction, if you're constructing something, but okay, you already have a building. So you have an asset, and you can have tangible and intangible assets in your incubator. Tangible assets, buildings, machines, computers. Intangible assets, your trademarks, your patents, if you have some. You can have your logo type and other intangible assets. Software that you develop can be your website can be considered an intangible asset. And sometimes our brand, our name, and our website are probably some of the most important assets we own, like Y Combinator or Techstars. Fuck, it's really important. Just those names are worth millions and millions of dollars. Okay, if you do a program with Techstars, the name itself is worth a crazy amount of money. Of course, you have equipment, human resources. Here, not really an investment, only if you consider your expenses, your expenditures on recruitment. And then reserves, which might be really important for the future. Someone talked about in the beginning of managing cash flows. So reserves are really important for the future. Then you have costs. We all know that we have a fuck ton of costs Salaries, social security, training, everything related to staff. Lunch subsidy, 14 months of salary we pay in Portugal. Training, which is mandatory also in Portugal, we have to have 35 hours of training per employee per year. So staff is a really important part of the operational costs. Of course, you can have also on external services, consultants and other services that might be related to staff. Then you have utilities, which might represent a big part or not of your expenditures. It depends. For us that we own 3 buildings, 4 buildings, it kind of makes a dent in our budget. That's why we try to decrease the expenses on utilities, and we try to all of our buildings now have solar panels because we're trying to decrease the amount, not only for sustainability reasons, guys, but because we want to decrease our energy bill. It's as simple as that. Transportation, rent, if you're paying rent, one of our buildings is not ours, so we pay rent. That's important. Insurance, that's mandatory mostly, and it can be different types of insurance. Our work insurance or workforce insurance, insurance for your facilities, and different types of insurance that will basically add upon add. Information and communication. Here, internet represents an infrastructure for the internet. Well, infrastructure should be here on investment. This represents usually a big part of an important part. I wouldn't say it's a big part. Here we have an advice, which is basically, guys, try to negotiate with your local telco. You're an incubator, you're an accelerator. You might have startups that want to connect with them. So try to negotiate packages of internet and other types of services at a discount price, because you're also connecting an ecosystem with them. Then you have communications, advertising, which is really important. And in this type of expenses, and we have also related with entertainment, what we do a lot, which is we do a lot of events in incubators, accelerators. So we'll have a lot of expenses related with community building. So that's not for free. Of course, sometimes we try. For instance, we got sponsorship, 5,000 euros for our Christmas party. Because we convinced the company to sponsor our Christmas party at Startup Leiria. That's cool. But usually most events are negative in terms of profit that we have. So if we do a demo day, or if we do a night pitch session, or if we do a meetup about coding or low code, no code technologies, we'll provide food, we'll provide the facilities, we'll provide the sound, and all of that is on us. So those are expenditures that we have to take into account. And of course, we plan for them beforehand, because we know the amount of events we're going to have during the year. And then you might have some, for sure, repairs and maintenance and business materials that you'll need, which usually don't represent a lot in the percentage of costs. Higher percentage of costs, of course, usually is staff and external services. External services that can be advertising, consultancy, help you might need in a specific project. So usually those types of costs are the biggest costs we have in a incubator. Important thing for you guys, this matters. Fixed costs versus variable costs. Again, like we saw before, your recurrent revenue should be sufficient to sustain your fixed cost. Your salaries, your rent, your insurance, your software license, this is going to remain relatively constant regardless of the number of startups you serve. Okay. And of course, if you have staff and they're part of your permanent staff, you know you're going to pay those salaries and the social security and taxes. Either you have any income or a lot of income. So beware of that. That's really, really important when you're planning your financial, when you're doing your financial plan. Of course, variable costs are related with programs, events. So this is important because it might help you determine break-even point and setting service fees or fundraising targets, because you know you will have those costs no matter what, and you have to cover them. And in terms of variable costs, okay, if I'm doing a program and the costs, and it's a new program, it will have a cost of $10,000. So okay, let's set another stream of revenue to try to cover this variable cost. Okay. So if your incubator hosts a demo day for 50 people every quarter, the cost, food, venue, marketing is variable and depends on big the event is, and obviously depends on how many you're going to have. And of course, you might even choose not have any of these events, but of course those are important. But those you can create fees or sponsorships or other alternatives to support those variable costs. So again, don't forget operational costs, personal costs, internal team remuneration, external professionals, and training. Sometimes we forget about training, and training is really important. Software licenses. I wanted to swear. This modern world, everything is software as a service. So if you have HubSpot, if you have an accounting or a software, if you have a software for managing your team, if you have Office, if you have ChatGPT and you're using the paid version, and if you have Illustrator, and if you have, there's an app, and then you even have a lot of softwares that are tailored to incubators. These add up really quickly, guys. We're talking about $50 here, $100 here, 50 here, 200 here, 400, and then you have a lot of money going into software licenses. Obviously, cloud services, um, um, servers, hosting, storage, processing, this is really important. It's going to also absorb a lot of your budget, okay? And if you provide uh, um, equipment, of course, this is investment, not the cost, but you have to be sure that your incubator has up-to-date equipment for your startups. Again, as I said before, incubator promotion, community involvement, those are some of the costs that you have. What you should do is expense mapping and identify all areas of spending, evaluate the return of each investment, and eliminate unnecessary expenses. So for that, you need to have some kind of spreadsheet. I'm going to show ours in a few moments. Bear with me, it's in Portuguese, but I'm going to show it. Increase productivity should be interesting. We're going towards this road in Startup Idea, which is use technology to reduce costs. ChatGPT, agents, automation doing inside. For instance, we have free Office licenses for free because we are a nonprofit and we are in Microsoft nonprofit program. With inside Microsoft Office 365, we have Power Automate. And what we're trying to do is to automate a lot of the workflows we have at Startup Idea. And then we increase productivity and we don't need as many people as we would need to do a lot of stuff. A quick pause on this, guys. The future is here. 2025 will be full of opportunities for automating a lot of tasks inside of your incubators. It's good, it's bad. I don't know. I see it as a good thing because I don't need my team doing like shitty tasks of filling um, uh, some kind of documents or keeping up with KPIs or sending emails or remembering each incubatee about the program, because all of that is done automated, and I can free my team to do consultancy and mentorship and solve problems of the incubators and prepare acceleration programs. So I see it as a good thing. I'm not going to fire people at the moment, but we're going on this road. Economies of scale, so expand services to dilute fixed costs, which is rather important. We'll have the same cost if our building is full or half full. So try to have it full. That's really important. And this we do. When I was in Angola and Luanda, I told the guys this: each 6 months, negotiate with your suppliers, or it depends on the duration of the contract. If it's 1 year contract, so don't remain stuck with a supplier because he is your friend. Negotiate better commercial conditions when possible. Do a budget. Usually you should do a budget around November, December for the year. And then each trimester, analyze your cost structure in terms of what you're doing. So we already talked about this, the different revenue sources. And here, basically, you should have a revenue spreadsheet where you have the different types of revenue coming and which ones are recurrent, and which ones are subsidies or third-party generated, let's call it like that. And this will help you compare revenues and costs. Before going to this, I'm going to show you a little bit about what we do. So this is in Portuguese, bear with me. We have, for each year, we try to predict the amount of services that we're going to supply from each center of costs, and each month we calculate the average monthly revenue, also each month for center of cost. And then we divide it in types of services because we want to know which ones are recurrent and which ones are not. So we have here, it's Portuguese. We have some people from Angola, you can read. Physical incubation, virtual incubation, domiciliation, idea incubation, post-incubation, co-working. And then we have some team sharing, meeting rooms, coffee breaks, equipment rental, consultancy, and other types of revenue. So, and this is only recurrent, okay? Then we have another spreadsheet where we have what we call other revenue, where we have if it's coming from a specific program from the government or some sponsorship we have with, this is a grant from a municipality. It can have, we don't have it here, but we have other grants from municipalities that compound in the end of the year. Here we have financial income, and then we have grants, so project grants. And we have, this is the different 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 projects that we have ongoing at Startup Pleiria. So this helps us not only predict, but also keep tabs on what is happening each month. And in the end of the year, we know where we are. We do it although and despite we also have an accounting firm that does the accounting each month, and we have that also in track. But we do it for internal uses, guys. Okay, so you could like outsource all of this shit to your accountant, but then you know nothing about what's going on. So we don't advise you to do that. Or you have a very good relationship with your accountant and you understand accounting and you have monthly reports from him. It can work. It can work, but we do it with this mixed approach. Then we have all investments. that we're planning to do in each month. And the different, is it resources, buildings, basic equipment, administrative equipment, and then we have depreciation here also. This is important for the ones that are into accounting. Then we have staff costs, and staff costs we have per month. So we have the wage, the vacation subsidy, Christmas subsidy, the I don't know how to say it in English, but it's food subsidy in Portugal. Cost helps, but basically if someone has to travel somewhere, we have to cover their expenses. Work medicine, training, social security, insurance, and some compensation, and also prizes we have here. And we have gratifications, which is the prizes that our team. And then we have also, you have a good perspective. I'm not going to show all of this. Of all your personal costs each month, okay, and how much your team costs and how much different stuff might cost in the future. It helps a lot. I don't know if I'm running out of battery on my audio. And then we have other expenses here by projects and centers of costs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, which is a lot. And then we have our loans. And all of this is linked to our yearly results that show up here. And we can predict them beforehand, and then we can compare what we predicted with what is happening. So, and then we have some different maps, and for trimester, and this one I really like. I have board meeting this afternoon, in the end of this afternoon. This one is really interesting, which is if we didn't have grants, how much would be our profit? And you can see it's negative, would be negative this year if we didn't have grants. And this for me, it represents an important part, because we know we are able to cover our fixed expenses, but taking into account our variable costs, we're not able to support all of them. And I know if we want to be a sustainable incubator, I have to have more recurrent revenue for the team size I have now. Okay. Of course, we have some solutions for 2025, where we know we're doing some partnerships with companies and also with municipalities, where we'll have recurrent revenue and we might get this back to zero. So we would be net zero without grants or projects. If anyone is interested, I can send you the Excel. Well, of course, I'll like clean most of the values, but this is a good example of a financial tool I think any of you should have. Okay. So problems comparing revenue and in projections. So forecasting uncertainties in this impossible triangle. We always know everybody has a. I like this famous sentence from a famous philosopher called Mike Tyson, which is everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face. So Yeah, Bishat, I'll try to auto translate it and send it in English to you. So everybody has a plan until they have they're punched in the face. So usually we are kind of really good at forecast expenditures, the fixed ones, because we know the amount of rent I'm going to pay, more or less energy I'm going to pay, utilities I'm going to pay, the wages I'm going to pay. So those things, expenditures are more or less predictable. But then there's a lot of uncertainties that we face, mostly regarding revenues and sometimes investments. So imagine, I'm not going to show you the pictures, but um, we had a flooding in one of our buildings 3 weeks ago. Then you do have a problem when that happens. So of course we have reserve funding for emergency, but we weren't expecting um, to have a flooding, and we're not sure the insurance company is going to support some of the costs. We have servers and computers flooded, which is not cool. Uncertainties related with revenue. So one of your startups might go bankrupt or they decide to leave. So, and then you might lose someone that is paying a consultancy and rental fee. And you never know when they're doing, because for us, our contracts only have 1 month of a, how do you say it in English? Uh, 1 month of advance to alert if they're going away, which is not good, but yeah, it's how we operate. Sometimes it happens. Um, Sometimes we project that we have a partnership with a certain municipality where we have a sponsorship, a yearly sponsorship of, let's imagine, $75,000 per year. And the mayor changes, and the mayor decides that, nah, we're not giving this to Startup Lady anymore. So projecting revenue is a little bit more difficult than projecting costs. And this is a good lesson. And sometimes we work with, there's a lot of risk involved in what we do. Of course, guys, if you work with grants, public grants, government grants, sponsorship projects, always, always have working capital, because the money will never come when promised. Okay? Big lesson learned. Sometimes it will come 6 months afterward it was promised, sometimes 1 year, sometimes 5 years. Yesterday we received an email about the project called EC716, which was with the government body of the region of Centro in Portugal. The project ended in 2018, guys, 7 years ago, and they didn't give us the rest of the money of the project yet. So beware of that. Okay, subsidies, grants always generate a cash flow problem. So you have to have working capital to face this. Okay, otherwise you will be in trouble. I cannot emphasize this more. Okay, this is being recorded. I'm going to emphasize again, always have working capital, because you will never receive the grants, the subsidies when you're supposed to receive them. Okay? Personal example. I used to have a startup, guys, 8 years, 9 years ago. It was really, really cool startup, but we went bankrupt. It happens, you know. Sometimes people say third time is the charm. But we were awarded a government grant from a program which was called entrepreneurship voucher. It was 120,000 euros, which was a cool amount, guys, for a startup that was starting. Really cool. We were granted the money. We didn't have a lot of working capital. We operated through 2 years. We closed, and it was not pretty because there was some disagreements between myself and my partners, my associates. And in the end, we closed the company and we didn't receive the grant. So the 120,000 euros never existed. You see, this is the problem when you're working with grants. So investments, always do feasibility studies when doing your investments, and different types of investments you have here: reserve fund, equipment, physical facilities. Don't forget about the other annual operational costs that we already went through. Okay, they're really important. And again, cash flow is essential to any business. And for you to succeed, you should monitor overall financial performance and beware of your progress. Monitor the accounts on a regular basis. We do it every month. Also develop a strategic approach for controlling bank balances. Do you have a special account? How do you say it in English? We call it in Portuguese descoberto, which is a special account where a special credit account where we can get up to 100,000 euros with a specific interest rate if we don't have liquidity. So we have one of those that we negotiated with one of the banks we work with. That's really important because sometimes you can be economically profitable, but again, like I said, you don't have the grants, you don't have liquidity, you don't have the money. So, and for that reason, if you don't have enough working capital, you should have one of these bank accounts, and we call it uncovered in Portuguese. So where you have a fixed amount of money, you can loan at a specific, very special interest rate, not high interest rate. So, and for that, again, you should have at least one person or two inside of your incubator taking care of all of this. So what can we do when we are in short-term financial trouble? We have here 4 alternatives. Inject funds from a reserve account if you have one. I'm advising you guys to have one. Postpone commitments, which is not cool. So delay wages and other commitments. Never delay payments to the state. The state doesn't forgive. Bring more projects forward. This is kind of hard, but because projects take time to develop and and be granted, or draw up different alternatives. Yeah, credit line. Thank you, Maureen. Draw up alternative strategies can be interesting, but yeah, there's different alternatives. Here, guys, we're not doing a pause, but I have a case study. But since we have a lot of people and we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to show you the case study, and then I'm going to show you the solutions to the case study if everybody's agree with that. Let me show you the case study, which EBN will send you guys the case study by email. So I called it case study impact incubator navigating financial sustainability. So this incubator was established in 2018 in Ghana with a mission to empower undeserved entrepreneurs in sectors such as agri-tech, health, and green energy. Initially, it was funded by a 3-year grant from an international development agency. Very common, I think, to a lot of you. What the incubator does is provides co-working spaces, mentoring programs, and seed funding to early stage startups. Also very common to lots of African examples of startups as incubators we have here. Problem: in 2022, the grant expired, and now the incubator struggles to sustain its operations. The leadership team decided to develop a diversified financial model to ensure long-term sustainability while continuing to serve startups that cannot afford high services. Remember what I said? We have a mission, and our mission, we're not those guys from big office spaces like how they call that rent space, premium space. We are basically helping startups. So while continuing to serve startups that cannot afford high service fees. So we have to continue with our mission. So current situation, revenue streams, 80% of the incubator funding comes from grants, which no longer are available, which is not different from the situation I asked you in Menti in the beginning. Some of you were below 20, some of you were below 40. These guys are private, so they take 10% equity on startups, and they have service fees for co-working spaces and mentorships. So, which is only 20% of the annual budget. Fixed costs. So they pay $8,000 per month for rent, salaries, and utilities, and they have variable costs of $3,000 per month for events, workshop, and marketing. Now they have $25,000 of reserves, which is not a lot because if you only have 20% of the budget coming from fees, and basically you will have 2.3 months before the monthly expenses are $11,000. Your runaway is 2.3 months. So here I have some opportunities and risks. As A tech company has expressed interest in sponsoring workshops for women in tech. A regional agri-tech accelerator wants to partner on a revenue sharing model for joint ventures. And there's a new government fund that has launched a new grant program but requires a co-financing contribution. So also a recent regulatory change, you said, as I told you, we never know the future, increased taxes on co-working space rentals by 15%. And two high potential startups that represent 40% of the incubator equity portfolio are struggling financially and might fail. So your task here is to be the financial consultant and think a little bit about these questions that I have here. Propose at least 3 new revenue streams they could explore, how to balance these streams with the mission. Second question, develop a 3-year financial plan for the incubator, including revenue, expenses, and cash reserves. How do you deal with uncertainties? Then identify potential cost-saving measures without compromising the quality of services, and access the feasibility of partnerships here, and then which KPIs you should use. Again, this is a rather, I would be amazing for an in-person session where I could divide you guys into groups and you guys could work together to solve the case study. But now I'm going to give you another 10-minute break and then we'll see the solution to the case. Okay? Is it okay, Douglas?
Yeah, so 10 minutes, yes, until about 1/2 the hour.
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay, and I'll be back in 10 minutes, guys, and with the solution. Amazing. Life is not like this. Usually you have to come up with a solution. But this is magic.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter.
back. So I hope you guys are there. I love all the empty places. Let's go for the solution of the case now. Okay. Again, we'll send you the PDF of the case. Of course, this would be great to do in an in-person workshop for you guys to come up with the solutions. But yeah, I came up with the solutions for you guys. Okay. So first thing that the guys wanted is like your grants are ending. You had 4 years to establish your incubator, and now you have 2.3 months of runaway. So what else can you do to diversify your income and be able to build a more sustainable impact incubator? So here I have different alternatives in terms of revenue. So corporate sponsorship and CSR partnerships, tech companies like the example that was given, sponsoring workshops or funding incubator programs. Really interesting in terms of revenue. Mission alignment is very high because you're doing a program. Advantages, your money comes up, aligns with social impact, and it's scalable. Just a little bit of advice here from real world, from the case to the real world. Not easy because we're trying to do our program, our acceleration program. We have one for seed companies, mostly seed, not pre-seed. It's called Setup. We have one called Talent Up, and then we have one Grow Up, and then we have one called Scale Up. We are very smart at naming our acceleration programs. But yeah, the problem is we are now looking for a partnership like this one for our program. But then we have to balance the operational costs of the program with prizes, which is kind of complicated because at least in Europe, we need some kind of carrot to attract the startups. So it's difficult to balance the amount of money from the sponsorship. One thing we saw in the description is that the impact incubator could increase the fee-based training and the consulting services. Boot camps, consulting services to businesses could be interesting. Reputation helps. Guys, I just received a phone call from Yazaki Saltano, which is one big manufacturer from Japan. We're doing an entrepreneurship program with them. We Startup Player. Of course, that we were able to do that with increased branding and being recognized as one of the best incubators in Portugal. And of course, that's not very easy because you're competing with consultancy companies that do this for a living. Apply for another grant. Whoa! So this is usually a way to go. obviously, you have, as I told you before, solving a market failure going for you. So obviously, you are going to spend a lot of money, a lot of time in the application, and matching funds, because in the case study we saw that you needed 20% of own funds for this application. Equity crowdfunding or angel networks, more difficult. So high position with the mission, but especially I would say in Africa, it's kind of complicated to go into towards this direction. So what you should do from this small summary is go for corporate sponsorships, high funding potential, fast alignment, fast money for the program. Government grants for sure, because it's going to last longer and allows the incubator to have a lasting impact with a revenue that is more fixed, and increase the fee-based services because they have potential for steady growth. So a 3-year plan would be more or less like this, where we have corporate sponsorships increasing from year to year. The government grants, from the grant you're going to apply, also as a part of your revenue, and increase a little bit your service fees from co-working, mentorship, and trainings. Almost double it by year 3. This way, you would have 2/3 of income coming from recurrent revenue if you have a partnership with the sponsor, and only 1/3 of income coming from the grant. And you also have this additional fee on consulting and workshops you can do with companies. And here the idea is to kind of maintain your fixed costs more or less the same throughout the years, and the variable costs are going to increase because you have consultancy and workshops and trainings, of course, and they're going to increase a little bit. So on the first year, and taking into account you had a reserve of $20,000, $25,000, you have a deficit in the first year, and so we have a negative cash reserve. We have to have a loan or something like that, the credit line, to support our activity. On the second year, we are on net zero, but okay, we still have the negative 2,000, and by the third year, we would have a surplus in terms of our activities. Of course, as we usually say, Excel accepts everything. Like Word, it has orthography and grammatical character, but it doesn't have a stupidity character. And albeit we have ChatGPT and other tools, you can put whatever you want in the Excel sheet that it's not going to say this is stupid. So of course there are risks involved in doing this type of plan. There are uncertainties like we talked about. So we should account for certain uncertainties, like tax increases that were expressed on the case study. So include a 10 to 15% contingency in the budget to accommodate changes. Also maintain a rolling forecast and reserve requirement, 2-3 months of operating expenses in the bank, because as we said, we always have liquidity problems. Cash flow is king. If you don't have money in the bank, your operation can stop. And startup exits, equity stakes may yield future windfalls, but they're uncertain. They cannot be the core. They can never. There's only, guys. There's one reason. There's a few Techstars, Antlers, Y Combinators in the world. There aren't thousands. Those models are the exception. Living from equity is the exception. You should reduce rent with partnerships and negotiate, if possible, a lower lease on your space in change of consultancy services, for example. When possible, use interns or part-time experts for specific programs. We are a little bit excessive on this. We use a lot of internships. We work closely with the Polytechnical University of Leiria. When we receive a lot of interns that have to do their internship on marketing or control management or whatever, IT. So we take them. We usually take 5, 6, 7 per year because they're really helpful and they cost almost zero. We only pay the subsidy for the meals. So it's a really interesting alternative to have more people with less costs. Shift to digital. If you have to do a program, instead of renting a venue and having coffee breaks and all kind of stuff, you can do mentorship sessions online. And shift to platforms where you, like this one we are using today, and record and basically yeah, it's able to decrease a little bit the amount of cost you have. Of course, again, personal advice, always balance your online activities with your face-to-face activities in person, because sometimes entrepreneurs they give value to face-to-face interactions. And as I said, bridge financing, short-term loans, credit lines, aim to maintain a minimum of 2 to 3 months of operational expenses in liquid reserves. When possible, negotiate flexible payments with suppliers. Consolidate monthly expense payments to maintain tighter control over outflow. And there was this proposition of two sponsorship and revenue sharing model with a tech company, which seems rather feasible and a way to go, because they offer themselves to sponsor the program, align the mission. With the other accelerator, it can be beneficial for both parts. But again, when going to the operational part, joint events require joint definitions of tasks, roles, responsibilities, and revenue. Speaking of one, we have an example. We have a program going on with another incubator, and it's not easy. Everybody wants their share, and obviously you want to maintain your brand. So kind of two-sided knife. Okay. What financial risks these partnerships might accommodate? Inadequate sponsor partner funding commitments and clear exit clauses, underestimation of overhead staff costs, and some operational risks like brand misalignment or mission drift, inability to meet sponsor or partner KPIs, staff capacity to manage these additional programs. Things that you should monitor, which will go into our final discussion in a few moments. Monthly burn rate. So always see expenses versus revenue each month. Number of months of operating expenses covered by current reserves, and revenue diversity ratio, percentage of revenue from each source. We already talked about this in the beginning. Of course, you should have like normal mission alignment program KPIs, like number of startups supported, survival rate, or female or underrepresented groups participation. And then you should measure partner satisfaction. If you have someone that is sponsored your program, you should measure if he's happy, and also the participants in the program. So track their attendance, satisfaction, surveys, and etc. And in the end, you should have a report with all of this, because your sponsors will want to know this. Okay, so involve all stakeholders on this task. Now I realize I don't have a lot of time going on, do I? Robert, Christina, how much time do I have to the end of the session?
Well, we can run over a bit, Vitor, if that's okay with you and the participants.
Yeah, I'll go not a lot, but because this last part can be really quickly. So I already gave you some indicators of successful financial management. So net profit, which is obvious for the ones that know a little bit about accounting. So net profits divided by revenues multiplied by 100. Self-sustainability ratio, incubator generated ratio, revenue, divided by third part generated revenue. Ideally, this should be higher than 1. Okay. And other indicators, generating taxes. Sorry, I'm laughing because we are closing accounts. As I said, I have board meeting this afternoon at 5. If paying taxes is good, it's bad, but it's good. It's bad because we have to pay taxes. Nobody likes to pay taxes. But it's good. It's a sign that you're profitable, and of course, measures that include tax generated by graduated enterprises. Also, this is interesting. It's a measure of success. It tells you that they're not negative profit and cost of employment. Don't forget that a business incubator needs to maximize the revenue, and this implies that you have deal flow, startups coming in, projects coming in, and this will lead to financial viability and also public support. Even as I said previously, if you're 100% government or regional body or municipality supported, you should strive to be profitable or at least net zero. Of course, one can argue, and this is going to win academic discussion, that maybe an incubator should not be profitable at all without subsidies because we're operating on market failures. That's what I'm always trying to say to our local mayor. He doesn't understand that, and it forces us to pay rent, which is something very uncommon. We pay rent to our municipality and they don't give us money. But there's an argument for that. Other important things, so implementing financial control systems. So break down the annual budget into shorter cycles. Quarters is interesting. First quarter, second quarter. And this will help you, okay, if we spend too much on marketing on the first quarter, we should like take care on the second quarter and so on and so forth. Or if we had the budget of marketing that we didn't spend, we can spend it in other alternatives in the further quarters. Compare actual revenue and expenses, and always investigate discrepancies. And you can only do that if you do quarterly or monthly reviews. We try to do monthly at Startup Lady with that model I showed you. That model is fed with information from our ERP software. So we have the Excel, but the Excel is being sourced by real data coming from our accounting and expenses software. That allows us to maintain a tight control on what is happening during the year. So don't do it only in the end. So because if you do it in the end, it's too late. Sorry, I did something wrong. Other things important, so minimizing fraud, so segregation of duties. So the person that pays should not be the person that records transactions. We have that divided here also on Startup Lady. And also we have these small expenses up to X amount of euros are approved by myself, and about 5,000 euros they're approved by the board. So and above, like the investment I told you that we're going to do or not going to do in a building, which is €1 million, that's decided by the General Assembly of Associates. So this way you have tiers and you minimize potential fraud. We only have one credit card, and basically it's quite controlled. And we do regular audits, and we have approval systems, not based on Zoho, but we could have, we have signatures also, signature system inside of Startup Lady. Don't forget that your donors require usually reports. Guys, I showed you our Excel. That Excel connects with an Excel that has, I don't know, 200 sheets, because our projects that have grants, local European, Portuguese grants, or local grants, or European grants, they demand so much report, so much report, so much proof of expenditures, so much documentation, that we have to monthly do reports to all that stuff. And we have one person taking care of all of that. We have thousands of reports during the year. And of course, this actually, the second point here is actually simpler, which is local regulatory compliance. So legal issues, we have an accountant, external accountant, that does all of this. So tax obligations, financial records, etc. But I would argue that doing the reporting for the project is much more tiresome, and the workload is much higher than the one for doing the normal taxes in Portugal. We already talked a little bit about this, so have contingency plans, seek flexible installment plans whenever possible. For some of you, hedging strategies in terms of exchange rates is interesting, or hold a portion of your funds in euros or dollars might be a great advice, or have all of your programs based on dollars or euros should be really important. Stay updated on local taxes, guys. Things change. For instance, we are from last year. We are into, how is it called? Funding law of transparency, because we hold headquarters of companies in our incubators. So we are subject to an European law where you have to have track record, not only of the companies, but of the individuals that are part of their companies, so the ultimate owners. And we have to see if they're political compromised and the risk they represent. So guys, this is really tricky. It's called the Transparency Directive. Banks and startup area are the ones that forced to do it. But always screen your local laws, because they're always changing. So we already talked a little bit about this, this was another sample exercise. So someone delays funds by 3 months. What should we do? Which expenses should be deferred, or could you secure a bridge loan or negotiate? Usually, bridge loan credit lines are really cool because it helps you maintain a kind of stability if you didn't run out of the credit line. Otherwise, you're in trouble, and you should have to cut some costs or negotiate or delay some payments with negotiation. We have accounting software in Portugal, like thousands of solutions. I have some examples of platforms that are international here, like the Wave, QuickBooks, ZooBooks. It's interesting because then we have automated invoice, real-time financial management, and reduce human error. So we use the Portuguese platform called PHC, but there are thousands of platforms that you could use, low cost or no cost. usually a small cost, you know, for this. And then we use Power BI because we have Microsoft 365 and we use Power BI. And we have that Excel. So we are doubling down on the control and the metrics we use. We also have a platform now, a new one, to track our programs, mentorship, and acceleration programs. Software helps and helps automate and helps decrease costs, guys. This is in the beginning it's costly, but in the end it's going to be more. You're going to more efficient and more easy to manage your incubator if you have the perfect solutions of software. Here, building a financial resilient incubator. So again, the example I gave you in the case study, which is try to move up from grants to a more diversified revenue model, from 80% grants, 20% fees, to something like 40% grants, 40% services, 30% partnerships. So you're only relying 1/3 on the grants. Actually, because Douglas asked me, and I was able to find out a real example of someone that did this progress, Bethnal Green Ventures, which was basically mostly funded by grants, but as it went along, it started offering workshops, educational programs, consulting services, and also there were an impact incubator taking small equity, minority equity on the companies. These gains were reinvested on the accelerator, and also they created a program for sponsorships because they were in impact incubator. So in a late stage model, the grants were a very minimum part of their activity, and the revenue, obviously, with more reputation, they attracted more partners, angel investors, corporations that paid for workshops. They also realized more equity, and the accelerator evolved way beyond the grant model into a fee model. This can happen. We have an example. I think Douglas knows it from Portugal, BTI, which was like they went from an incubator accelerator to a consultancy company. So sometimes there's this road ahead of you that you don't know how it's going to end. So other KPIs you should monitor: burn rate. So how much money do you burn each month? So what are your expenditures? Runaway, so how much money you have in terms of reserves. Customer acquisition costs, how much do you pay for each new startup that enters your ecosystem. Lifetime value, so if you have a 3-year or 5-year incubation program, what is the lifetime value of a startup? Because you should compare the cost of acquisition with the lifetime value of a specific startup in your incubator. And so action plan that you should do after this session, conduct an internal financial health audit, assess current funding sources, cost structures. Are there controls? Do you have reserves? Identify your revenue streams and see which ones you can diversify, you should increase. And customize a template like the one that I showed you that you could use to track your operational activities. Set up budgeting and forecasting cycles, monthly or quarterly, and adjust budgets based on that, and align internal board meetings with external donor requirements to maintain transparency and trust. And yeah, not bad. 5 minutes behind the time. So this was rather expositive, guys. I'm sorry, but we'll give you the case study. I'll give you the Excel for you guys to explore a little bit. And you have the recorded and the slides of the session. And I think we need, we can be with BIC Africa and the EBN, of course. I would love you guys to do that with them. But if you need additional training on financial modeling, you should seek out it because it's really important for the health and the sustainability of your incubator. So I'm open to questions. We still have a few minutes. 10 minutes after time is like on time in Portuguese standards.
Absolutely. Any questions in the chat, or just please raise your hand and ask it on camera. As people are thinking, maybe just a very quick thank you from me, Vitor. Very interesting indeed, really. And I very much love the real experience that you brought to the presentation. I found that very
I even
interesting
have
indeed.
board meeting this afternoon and discussing the results of 2024. It's going to be fun.
I haven't seen anything yet, so maybe over to you, Christina.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything yet either. Yeah, thanks a lot, Vitor, for this very practical session. Indeed, I think that hopefully the participants learned from it and will take on board all the advice that you've given. So thanks a lot, and thanks for the participants for being here today, for asking questions, for participating in the interactive activities. And indeed, we hope that you learned from today's session, and we're hoping to see you as well in next week's session if you're going to be attending. So that will be on agribusiness and partnership development next Wednesday.
Thank you, Evaldo. Thank you,
we have
Christina.
something in the chat. Okay.
I just saying thank you.
Vitor's presentation part of that. So indeed, we will send the slides by email, and we will also put the recording on YouTube. So you should have everything.
Thank you, guys. And thank you, Christina, and thank you, Douglas, for the amazing support you gave me during this morning.
Thank you, everyone. Christina, I guess we can close the session. Yes.
Yes, I'm going to prepare the board meeting.
Yes, I think we can close the session. Thanks again. Thanks a lot, both of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everybody.